My name is Olga Escamilla, and I'm your host for today. Welcome to our Workforce Wednesday webinar. Today's topic is preparing our students for the workplace using employability skills and scenarios. I want to welcome our presenter, Eden Casal, and she is with Victoria College Adult Education and Literacy. Today, we have Eden Casal, and she is going to be talking about preparing our students, and her current position is Sales Project Manager, and she'll go into a little bit more detail about that. She has 3+ years of experience as a career navigator. Her primary focus is training, preparation, and IET. She has a BS, Bachelor's in Science, in Psychology, and she is currently in University of Houston, Victoria's MA program for Forensic Psychology. So welcome, Eden. We look forward to your presentation, and if y'all have any questions, please type them in the chat pod, and be sure to send to everyone. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to change to Eden's presentation, and we're going to go ahead and Eden, take it away.
Our training program, students accelerate their integrated learning, where we're combining their GED skills with their training program so they can knock out both at once. This is an overview of what I'll be talking about today. We'll go over why they're important skills for the students to have, and also some activities you can implement into the classroom. We're going to go over time management, teamwork, negotiating, critical thinking, employability skills, mock interviews, and real-world scenarios. Okay, time management. So why is time management important? You can type a response in the chat pod on why you think it's important for students to have to stay employed. We had time to answer, but those are really good answers. We do want our students to know that time management's important so they can get to work on time, so they can manage their time to make sure that their duties are being done in a timely manner. And we all have, time restraints for everything, and there are deadlines. And this is something we want to get the students started with in their on-ramp classes. So it starts with attendance to class, being early to class. This is something you can start looking at the first day. You'll know if the students are going to be successful. You'll have a heads up, because the ones that are showing up to class early or showing up every day, they're usually the ones that are going to complete and be successful. I like to tell the students, once they get into their training programs, depending upon where they're going, some professors, lock the door at 6 o'clock and you can't get in. So always try to be on time, if not earlier, to class. There's some rewards you can give out in class, so like perfect attendance recognition. You can give out certificates at the end. The students always like being recognized. There's some things you can teach the students how to prioritize. So just those important matters versus the urgent ones. Important tasks are the tasks that contribute to long-term missions, so things that if you want to write a book, a presentation you'd like to make for a promotion at your job, any plans you start, a company you want to start building on, versus urgent tasks that are things that have to be dealt with immediately, like phone calls, emails, impending deadlines. So just kind of, give them the heads up on what the difference is. Also, how to eliminate distractions. We all have distractions. Some of those distractions could be, when you get home, being able to manage your time, put time aside from your family, because once we get home, we have to cook, clean, get busy with life, but being able to put time aside so they can study, so they can be successful. So just being able to eliminate distractions too. And then how to group similar tasks so that will cut down your time. Some tools you can use in class to teach your students to help them manage their time. The calendar, we all have a little calendar in our phones now, so teaching them how to use that can be very helpful. And then also checklists, teaching them how to make checklists, and so those can be helpful. Okay, so the next one is time management challenge. This is an activity you can do in class. What you would do is make a list of tasks on chart paper, assigning point value for each job. It could be something like doing 25 jumping jacks, getting each student to sign a piece of paper, making up a nickname for each person in the group. but go ahead and make a list on chart paper, assign them points, get the students to divide up into groups of 4. You want to make sure that the list of tasks you put on the paper are going to take them longer than 10 minutes to complete. So the students are going to get together in their groups, and they want to collect as many points as they can by deciding which tasks to perform. So this is also helping them with time management, which ones they can see which ones have the most point value, get those knocked out of the way, and then they're also using some critical thinking skills during this activity. Teamwork. So why do you think teamwork is important? If you want to go ahead and put some responses in the chat pod. Okay, those are really good answers. That is true. We will always be working as a team. We have others that we have to work with regardless of what our job is. And organizations are much more likely to perform well when their people work effectively as a team. So teamwork, it creates synergy where the sum is greater than the parts. It fosters flexibility and responsiveness and the ability to respond to change. It motivates unity in the workplace. It offers differing perspectives and feedback, which some of you mentioned. And then diversity of thought, creativity, and problem-solving approaches. So you are pretty much right with your answers on that, why it's important. So what about negotiating? Why is negotiating and knowing how to negotiate important? Okay, really good answers again. So we want our students to be able to negotiate so they can reach agreement while avoiding any arguments or disputes, like a lot of y'all mentioned. And again, like somebody mentioned, we can't always win, but we can be met in the middle. So with negotiation, the key is to maintain a relationship with mutual benefit while still being fair. Effective negotiators change their communication style in order to meet the needs of the listener, and behavior affects others. That's something that we need to really explain to our students, that how they approach someone, how they're acting, their behavior is going to affect others. And that listening is key while you're negotiating, listening to the other person. I'll tell you a quick story about a student where if she would have known how to negotiate, it would have been very helpful to her in her situation. So a girl came into class very frustrated, upset because she had to quit her job. When we asked what was going on and why she had to quit, she said that her boyfriend's baby mama started working there and there was no way she was going to be working with her. So she said she told her boss if he didn't fire her that she was going to quit. Needless to say, her boss didn't fire her boyfriend's baby mama. Instead of her lack of negotiation skills, left her without a job. We all know there are different ways to approach this, and she maybe didn't come off the right way. So what are some different ways she could have approached her boss, some things she could have suggested to her boss so she would have kept her job? You can go ahead and give your responses in the chat pod. Yeah, those are good ideas. She could have tried to work in a different location or store. Different shifts would have been helpful. This is a good time that we need to talk to our students about, too much information and not knowing or not sharing certain things. As your career navigator, we need to know a lot about our students. The better the more we know about them, the more successful we're going to be at our jobs. But we need to let the students know to keep in mind some of their drama, their personal information needs to stay at home and isn't appropriate for the workplace. In this situation, in my opinion, her telling her boss that isn't appropriate. She could have kept it to herself, but mentioned to her boss she does need, her shift needs to be changed, something like that, and she could have kept her job if she had better negotiation skills. Our next one is going to be critical thinking. Just really quick, why is critical thinking important? Why do you need critical thinking skills? Again, good answers, so you have to look beyond the basic task, different ways you can approach and complete that task. We have to make decisions every day, so critical thinking is very important with problem solving, and it's more than just a simple thought process. It involves thinking on a deep underlying level rather than the surface. You have to think about there's so much information out there nowadays, the social media, the TV, the internet. We have to make sure we're getting the right information, and having those critical thinking skills are important. You have to be able to analyze, think effectively, understand not everything is black and white. So some things you can teach in the class worksheets, fact and opinion, compare and contrast, and reflection papers help a lot with critical thinking. It really gets the students to think about some stuff. Here's some activities you can use for critical thinking. There's an activity called Zoom. So what you would do is each person in the class gets a card with a picture of an object on it, an animal, something. The teacher will begin the story by incorporating what's on their card. Then it goes on to a student who continues the story by incorporating what their picture is, and so on until the entire class has used their cards. Again, this is using some critical thinking skills or coming up with some stories. There's worst case scenario. Students are trapped on an island, can only have 10 items to assist them with getting off the island. Let the students brainstorm together and discuss what items will help them create safe passage off the island. All students must agree, and at the end have the students explain why they chose those items. And then just open-ended discussions in class, every day of class. It's going to challenge the students to identify problems in the community, work, or school, and help each other, problem solve at that point. Maybe that situation has happened to another student, somebody's been through it before, and they have some helpful advice to give somebody. Okay, so employability skills. What do you think are the most important employability skills? There are a lot, but which are the most important?
It says communication. We have punctuality, honesty, ability to work with others, articulation, politeness, time management, trust, respect. Again, being punctual, drug-free, and showing up regularly. Those are great. Communication, again. And business owners expect a new hire to know the basics of business.
That's true. They are all important. Communication, I think, with their students especially is key. Not just, once they go to the job that they need to keep communication open that way, but even with us as their career navigators, they need to have good communication with us and not be scared to tell us anything. Good decision-making, also a really good one. So some key ones, communication, teamwork, problem-solving, decision-making, willingness to learn, positive attitude, organizational skills, knowing how technology works, self-management, and understand the dress code and uniform guidelines. Those are some things we can go over with our students in class. So some activities you can do to help them with their employability skills. There's oral presentations that'll help them with their communication, research assignments, and again, the discussion's really big. And let them know that they do some of these things already. So for an example, they're already using their planning and organizing skills because they have to manage their time around work, school, and family. So, start a discussion in class. What soft skills do you use in everyday life? Not at work, but just in your daily life. And that'll get them thinking about it. You can discuss with the students hard skills versus soft skills. Those hard skills are things that your education, the training you've had, versus your soft skills. So instead of thinking, I worked at Whataburger, think, what did working at Whataburger teach me? What skills did I obtain from working at Whataburger? Whether it be customer service skills, your time management, money management skills, get them to think about that. So there's skills that can get you hired and help you keep your job. Some of those skills would be foundational skills, being organized, positive attitude, completing tasks on time, being dependable, flexible, and adaptable. There's interpersonal skills. That's being able to respond appropriately to requests, friendly, polite, being respectful of your coworkers, being able to resolve conflicts, and take constructive criticism. Your communication skills are really big too. You're being able to listen and understand questions, following directions, expressing ideas clearly, and being able to read and understand written matter. Your problem-solving and critical thinking skills, those would be like willing to stop and start duties, ask questions to solve problems to do a better job, and being able to accept change. A lot of people are not able to accept change, so we want to get them ready for that because things are changing daily. We know that. Teamwork, so being able to take responsibility for your own share of work, being sensitive to others' needs, and being able to contribute to team goals. These are some skills that can help you advance in your job. We don't only want to teach them how to get a job, we want them to be able to keep that job and advance and keep going. Okay, so career development, that's learning new skills and being able to take on different projects, taking the initiative, understanding different roles of your coworkers, understanding the industry you work in, and being able to align goals to mission and vision of your employer. Then there's some leadership skills, being able to coach and mentor, being able to negotiate, demonstrate efficiency, seek to simplify processes, build partnerships, and then being able to motivate others. Another thing we do in our on-ramp classes that our students really like, we introduce them, we do mock interviews. So in your opinion, really quick in the chat pod, why would mock interviews be important? How would they have helped you out?
Okay, the answers are starting to pour in. It says practice is important to work out how to answer and give professional responses. Very good. Body language and get feedback for responses. Very good. Helps young people feel more comfortable in that setting. Helps to overcome nervousness. This helps students to be more relaxed and make a better presentation at interview. Belta says for feedback. Kelly says to help form questions and learn how to interview work so that they can land a job. Very good. Cheryl says it gives you an idea of what to expect, and that has a calming effect which may help to get a job. Very good. Bruce says, I could tell when I gave interviews with those that had practiced and those that did not. Very good.
Oh, yes, this is some really, really good answers. So why do they work? Why are they helpful? Like y'all mentioned, they do help reduce stress and anxiety by training the students with the typical interview questions. We're not going to know exactly what questions are going to be asked, but there are those typical interview questions we can get them prepared for. The students can get feedback about if their responses were suitable or not, and it's instant feedback. It helps boost their confidence because they're going to be practicing over and over, and provides feedback in a low-stress environment. We do this in our classrooms so they can get feedback from other students, too. They don't have to feel stressed out, like, oh, I'm not going to get this job because this happened. So they kind of have a heads up from their fellow students, you know, how they were in the interview, their mock interview. Practice makes perfect. Body language and professional etiquette. So your body language when you walk into the interview, are you slouching, how you shook their hand, you know, walking out of the interview, how you looked, little things like that. Having a heads up is very helpful. And then it prepares you for behavioral interview questions. Before I go on to those, does anybody know some examples of behavioral interview questions? If you do, you can put it in the chat box.
Eden, Bruce mentioned teaching them what to wear and what not to wear to an interview. That's really important, too.
Oh, yes. That is a very important one because we've had some students that will come in and to them, you know, dressing up is like them going to the club, wearing way too much makeup and jewelry, showing maybe too much skin. So you want to teach them that's not appropriate. And we do, when we have our mock interviews, we ask the students to, you know, come dressed appropriately how they would to an interview. So part of their feedback is going to be, you know, how they were dressed.
Great. Now, Velta says maybe a tell me about a time question.
Yes, that's exactly, for the behavioral interview questions, that's exactly what they are. So your behavioral interview questions, they're questions that focus on how you handled various work situations in the past. Your response reveals your skills, abilities, and personality. The logic behind that is that your behavior in the past reflects and predicts how you will behave in the future. So sometimes these questions can catch us off guard because some of them may be, you know, describe a stressful situation at work and how you handled it. Okay, give an example of a goal you didn't meet and how you handled it. If our students didn't have a heads up, then they may talk about, you know, something totally inappropriate, you know, an example they shouldn't use. So having these mock interviews gives them a heads up and gives them ideas of a story, you know, a time, a situation that they could use that would be appropriate. And again, not, you know, with that TMI, you don't want your students to be giving too much information at the interviews. So it's basically a how would you respond in a certain situation question. Okay, and we want to definitely have our students prepared for that. So our mock interviews in our class are on-ramp classes. So students can practice one-on-one with each other. That's their first step, what they do, just to get feedback from each other. In our on-ramp classes, we like to the students get really close to each other, form support groups, know they're there for each other so they're not embarrassed to get this feedback, not ashamed. They can, you know, again, being able to take that constructive criticism. They're open to that, and it's very helpful for the mock interviews and then again for the discussions that we do daily. Something else to be helpful for the mock interviews would be a guest interviewer. someone the students aren't familiar with. Okay, so you want them to be a little bit nervous, so bring in somebody they don't know. It could be another teacher, someone on staff that usually sits in on interviews, or you could even ask someone in HR to come in to do that, since they have so much experience doing it. And they could really give the students some really, really good feedback. You're going to have the students dress appropriately, like we mentioned before, so they know that they're dressed appropriately. And then have the students bring their resume. And this in our on-ramp classes, we do complete resumes with them. So at that time, that's when they bring it in. Okay, some real-world scenarios. So what are some real-world scenarios, and have you ever used one in the class? You can go ahead and type it in the chat box.
Hey, Liz says situations, like work responsibilities are being modified. Bruce says absolutely a must for today's students. He says, I cannot tell you how many will answer questions in an interview with yeah, no, or in colorful, not professional language. Mauro says, a factual situation that involved making a decision that might have affected others. Bruce says, deadlines moved, work required you to work late or on a weekend. So what are those scenarios? Very good.
This is some really good scenarios right there. So with the real-world scenarios, it goes back to group discussions that you can have. The students, again, being able to present some stuff that happened to them at work, what's going on, and they can answer each other, give each other some helpful advice, how they would have gone about handling that situation. So the real problems they face at work, how do they respond to them? The teacher can also come up with different scenarios, and the students respond with appropriate ways to react and discuss why. And, at this point, too, there's going to be students that are going to give some examples that are inappropriate, and the students just being able to explain, to one another why it's inappropriate, getting on that level and explaining exactly why they shouldn't have come about that way, that's helpful to them. And they also, again, since they're, so close to each other, they have this relationship in the class together. They don't feel, again, any judgment or like somebody's talking down on them. So getting advice from fellow students is good. So some other things, a real-world scenario you can give somebody, the students, because a lot of times they don't know how to respond appropriately. Remember this. An example, you have to be at work at 8:30 a.m. It's 8:15. You have a flat tire and you're still 20 minutes away from work. What do? Okay, so when we present this to students, some of them are just like, quit at that point. Focus on my tire. I'm not going to get to work. I have to quit. I'm going to lose my job. They're going to fire me anyways. Want them to think, no, call your work. Let them know you're running late. You'll be right in. That's the appropriate thing to do. You need to call into work and let them know what's going on. But again, a lot of our students have in their head they're going to lose their job anyways. It doesn't matter. Another one, a customer comes in that is highly in an emotional state, very upset that her card was charged twice. Customer starts to get loud and use some not so nice language. What do? Okay, again, sure. Go ahead and respond how you think your students would respond to that, what they would do, and then I'll respond with the right way.
So while everybody's typing, Kelly says that real-world scenario would be a lead person calls in ill the day of a very important presentation. That's a good one, Kelly. Thank you. While everybody's typing, Kelly mentioned, is it Wendy? Wendy mentioned about the scenario about the flat tire. She said, well, it's 15 minutes to start and they're 20 minutes away, which isn't acceptable. So I guess one of the things would be to leave earlier for work.
Yes, I agree with that. See, and you can catch little things like that too. They should have left a little bit earlier for work and let your students know that, because you never know if something like that's going to pop up. Traffic could be really bad, flat tire, you never know what's going to happen, so you do always need to be early. Norbert, that's a good one. You call for backup. If somebody is acting like that, a customer, comes in just raging, it's a good idea to call for backup. Call your manager over to assist and let the customer know you're getting someone. That's a good one. Kelly, that's exactly right. That's what our students would say. They get defensive and attitude right away. That's what they know to do. That's the norm for them. We want them to know that's not right. Being able to, again, respond appropriately to what's going on. But yes, a lot of our students would just get as angry as that lady, start cussing at them, and end up losing their job. So put in their heads, to stay calm, understand what that customer is going through. It has nothing to do with you. They're just upset at a situation that's happening, so to kind of understand what they're going through, and if it becomes too much, then to go get somebody, back up to help them. And definitely, yes, Cheryl, they do need to listen to the customer. That's their job. And a lot of times, and what we tell our students, just being there to listen, let that person vent to you, let them get it out, and then you can respond, appropriately. But a lot of times, they just need to get that out, and it's over, and they're fine. So just letting the students know that. Some more real-world scenarios. This is a good one for the students that are going into the training. Being able to invite guest speakers to class, preferably those that are working in the field the students are interested in. They're able to give students real insight on specific scenarios they face on the job. So if you have a group of students that are going in for nursing, welding, electrical, having, a nurse come in and talk about some things that happen, on a daily basis for them and some scenarios that happen, giving the student a heads up so they know what to expect and how they are supposed to respond to it. That's a good one for the students. It's very helpful. They like being able to ask questions, too, to the guest speakers. Anytime you can have guest speakers in your class for, any reason, that's good, and the students really enjoy that. Okay, the questions, Kelly, that's what we do, too. We have the students prepare some questions beforehand so they can ask, but that's definitely a good one to do. Okay, so before I end, I just want to recap on some things we went over. So these are just a few things that we've implemented in our transition classes, our on-ramp classes, helping our students freshen up and practice. It's turned out to be successful for us and our students. Not only does this help them prepare for training in the workplace, but it's helped them be successful in the real world. And we have to remember we're not only preparing them to get the jobs, but we want them to advance and keep going from there. Okay, so recap really quick. We went over time management, teamwork, negotiating, critical thinking, employability skills, and mock interviews in some real-world scenarios. Right now, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I want to thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you, Eden. Does anyone have any questions? I know that Eden went through all of these different topics and different things that you could cover in your classes with students. Now, if you're interested in sharing something, I can unmute you and you can speak. Or if you have something you want to add, then if you will please let me know and we can place it in the chat pod. Kelly says she likes the real-world scenarios. That would make a great warm-up to each class time. Oh, I like that as a icebreaker or something to start the class off with. And Michelle wants to know if we'll get the slides. What we do is we put them through the accessibility process, and then I can post these in the community of practice under the career pathways. So yes, Michelle, if you are a member of the career pathways community of practice, I will place them in there, and you will get notified once they are up. And Elizabeth Moya wants to know if you're aware of any websites that offer additional guidance.
Not any specific websites. I mean, for any of these, the Internet's a really good tool for as far as activities and videos to watch. But I'm sorry, I don't have a specific website that I use for that.
So if anybody is aware of a specific website, it would be good to share in the community of practice. Once we post the PowerPoint, then you can share more information about maybe different websites that you use. That would be great. But Liz, we'll start looking for some to share. Thank you for that question.
I mean, I know the one website we do use so much. There's a free typing test. That's kind of our icebreaker, our daily thing in the classes. To when they come in for the first 10, 15 minutes, they do their typing test, and we give them a log. Because, typing's important. Technology is taking over. You have to know how to type. You can't type at, 5 words per minute anymore. But just having that log so they can see when they come in, they may be at 8 words per minute. And by the time they finish their class, they've moved up to 60 words per minute. They love doing that. And being able to practice that every day is helpful to them.
Now, Elizabeth says use gcflearnfree.org. It has some employability skills practice. Ooh, very good. There are several apps out there for time management and to help individuals stay focused on their work. And I had created a 1 hour presentation, 1 hour online, and I'm hoping that they'll be put on the PD portal soon. But there are some great apps that we can get students to use to help them with all these things for their in terms of career pathways, for the time management, for the employability. So keep an eye out for those. I'm hoping that those will get posted soon. But thank you, Liz, for the GCF Learn Free. Can you tell us a little bit more, or is it just about employability skills? Michelle Estrada says the TESOL or employability modules, those are really great. They've been around for a long time and they are still excellent. And Michelle, thank you for mentioning those. They're great for ESL. She's used a time management timeline for students to see what their day looks like. Very good. And Luis said, where are you? Thank you for communicating a tough content. Social emotional learning is critical for our AEL students. And they need more practice. Very good. Anyone else have any questions? Well, thank you very much, Eden. We appreciate you sharing all this great information, all the things that you incorporate into your classes, and we look forward to hearing more. But thank you all for joining us and for all your participation in the training. Thank you all, and have a great afternoon.